Hello. In the first part of this video series, which will top out at 3, we created this blocky character. Now I do want to make it plain that we are not after ultimately creating a low poly character. We're going to go at least medium poly, and this could easily then be taken into Mudbox or ZBrush or Sculptress indeed, and progress to something very, very high resolution and with some extra fine detail added. But this is about creating the base topology that will mean it easily subdivides and establishes the right kind of edge loop flow for deformation and for any kind of modeling purpose you want to take it to. So I'm going to go up to kind of medium level, I guess, low to medium, by hand, as it were, using just modeling software, and then you could easily see how it could be taken into something much high resolution for sculpting purposes, or just a kind of continued modeling process with a few of the kind of deformation tools and relaxation routines that's common to modeling software at the level of practice that is still, you'd call it modeling rather than sculpting. Okay, so in this part we're going to cover the topology for hands and head. So let's crack on. And again, this is all about creating a good clean topology, quads all over, and something that subdivides very, very neatly to a very high degree, should that be needed. Okay, so we're going to start with hands and then do head. So we're working in symmetry, and at some point in this process I'm going to mess up the center line. So a quick couple of strategies to fix those issues are going on. I'm going to do a kind of pattern of cutting, and then you'll be able to kind of interpret the other side of the hand's worth of cutting from that. Okay, so right, no further ados. So I'm going to go to Polygon and start work on these cuff areas here. Build out a wrist and then the palm of the hand. I won't get as far as kind of doing the fingers, but the base topology will be there to enable them to be done. Okay, so let's zoom in, and this view is kind of configured to get a good angle on the hand and show the base topology for the thumb. Okay, so we're in polygon mode. We are spray selecting, which is drag select, and we'll make sure that back face is on. You really don't want to catch any other back facing stuff by accident. It's quite likely or possible that you can get stuff that's not back facing but is accidentally included. So if we were looking towards the side of the body like this, I could accidentally gather in some of this. So this view is, this angle is kind of configured to avoid that where possible. Okay, so we want these 4 polys at the end, and hit Q. My keys are being shown off here by ShowOff. Okay, so you might have noticed that I did a marquee select instead of the paint select, and I've got no idea why it does that. Somebody will maybe be able to tell me. But anyway, I've got 4 poly selected, which is what we want. So we go inset, so we just build in an area inset. And we started off with quite a chunky arm. We want to keep these as level of polys kind of pretty low level as it is. Just where there are mistakes, it's so easy, much easier to fix them. Okay, about that, and accept that. And then while these are still selected, I'm going to reproportion the wrist and so flatten it, broaden it a bit, and then move it up so like the cuff is sort of hanging below. Okay, then the next thing is to do a bit of bevel, and I wanted to have a bit of a taper out. We're going to make it a bit wider in top view, and accept that, and then scale it again, because we really want the palm to be quite flat, so that a similar sort of base area for the fingers to sit in can be created. Okay, so it's time to extrude, and we're going to have a slightly short palm. What I often like to do is kind of overcook some areas at first, just to give them a bit of a presence. So I've got kind of more of a wrist area than maybe I need, but it's going to help kind of hit things and click things rather than when they're all crunched up together. Okay, so just a bit of space for operational purposes. Okay, so the next thing is, before I start cutting the profiles for the fingers to grow out of, the kind of outlines, if you like, I'm going to swift loop in a couple of loops. What these are needed for is that after I've put the finger bases in place by the cut tool, I will need these loops to kind of turn the extra edge loop flow down into, so that instead of all the finger bases going all the way up the arm where we don't need them specifically, they just get turned around the hand. So you might kind of debate and say, well, we don't need these edges, these things on the side of the hand, they're just kind of pointless loops. To an extent, that's right, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than having this whole edge loop continue all the way down the arm as well and onto the chest. So it's a kind of lesser of two evils, I guess. I'm going to go to vertex mode, which is 1 on your keyboard, and then to the cut tool. So I'm going to go to the Q, just in case I select something accidentally and start moving it, and then right click and choose cut. Okay, so now I can start adding in the finger bases. So they're kind of hexagonal, roughly speaking. Now when I'm doing the cut tool, you can see the cursor changes to reflect what type of object. So like there in the middle of a poly, and then that's a vertex, and then that's the edge shape cursor. So you just got to be a little bit careful about these. So I'm going to do the finger profiles, and then I'm also going to do a cut kind of straight up or down in between. And the reason for that is I want to add in enough detail for these to kind of cave in. It's not strictly necessary at this point, because the chief lesson is just kind of working with cuts and maintaining a kind of quadable approach. So I'm busy creating things on the sort of finger base of the hand. By the way, it's right click to snap off a bit of cut work, so you can start afresh with another cut operation somewhere else, and it automatically builds in the vertex over crossing edges or crossed edges. And this is the last one. Okay, so if you were worried about the proportions of this, then simple thing to do will probably go to edge mode. Oops, Q on the keyboard to cancel the cut operation and allow me to select stuff. Actually, it's probably better as a sort of polygon selection. So I'll get a polygon, and instead of marquee we'll go spray gun. So I've been looking for ways to try and limit the size of the spray head, and as you can see, I haven't been that successful. So I'm just going to exclude these, and move that over a bit, so the middle finger, middle out of 4, gets a bit more space. Okay, and before you start extruding fingers out, you might want to just change these profiles slightly. In fact, that's probably better as an edge. Okay, so we've got a kind of space between the fingers that you can describe or work up to be what you might call the webbing. Back to polys with the 4 key. Oops, there's perils of select and move, or select and rotate, and there's some very inaccurate selection. So if I zoom in, I can defeat the forces of unnecessary inclusion. Okay, so a bit better, a bit more work maybe, but maybe not now. Okay, so you can see that I've created all quads on the end of the hand here, and you can see also that I've unquadrified these, so now they're n-gons. Okay, so the technique you use to get rid of this lack of quads entails doing cuts that go up these, and it's a kind of divergence or turning that continues, and by the time we get to here, this will be a retained edge of well, just one edge really. So all of these will kind of flow up and then go down the side of the hand, and not spoil the picture all the way along the arm as well. Okay, so to the cut tool, right click, and we go cut. So the process is, I'm just going to get a decent angle on this so you can maybe clearly see what's going on. And under views, you can have a save active orthographic view, and then we can flip back to that to check the work, but at some points we'll need to go in closer. So we'll go from here to here, which the eagle-eyed will spot is a triangle being created there, and so we mirror that here. And the pattern we create on this side of these two fingers is mirrored here. Kind of the pattern of cuts, not necessarily the pattern of shape exactly. So not everything will be a rectangle ready geometrized. So we've gone from 5 edges along here to now 3. Brilliant. Okay, so to complete the process, we go from there to there, and from there to there. Okay, now we've got triangles here and here, so we can go across there, and although it's triangular shaped, it's got 4 sides, it's a quad. Likewise here, we go all the way across to there, it's a quad. Okay, maybe you don't believe me. Okay, so there's a couple of things to do. We go to polygon mode, and in case you've ever wondered about all these freaky selection things, occasionally I go selection by half just because I've got tiny close together edge loops and can't accurately kind of grab exactly half over a center line of the model mesh, but mostly I do it by hand. But this one is really useful. So select non-quads. So we've got no non-quads in this area. Brilliant. Okay, still looks a bit triangular, and it could do with sort of evening out slightly. So if that being in the case, and you don't have to be in polygon mode for this next operation, let's go Q to cancel the cuts and go to freeform, paint deform, relax, soften. It's a bit of a drag to get there, but if you hold your finger on the Alt key, size the brush down and reduce the strength, it's by default it's 1, which is full strength. So I'm on 0.1 for strength on this, and then start dragging, and it evens out the mesh, so your actual quads look more like quads. And not only that, it makes things look a lot more regularized as well. Okay, so then the pattern would be replicated on this side. So you can see that it's a worthwhile thing to do. So 5 edges been reduced to 1 over kind of 2 loops down the side. So this is the other side replicated. I did select non-quads, none turned up in the hand, bingo, fantastic. Okay, and a quick back to freeform, paint deform, relax and soften. Notice how small the brush is, finger on the Alt key and it stops the mesh from shrinking, and then just brush over those. And again, mesh evens out, looks more kind of orderly, like it's been placed there on purpose, you might think. Start to even out or kind of change the gaps between the fingers as well, which you might want to go back and reset. But by the time you've got an edge loop going down each finger, an extra edge loop to go down each finger, you're going to want to have adjusted that anyway, before or after. Okay, so just as you see on the top of the hand, do the same on the bottom of the hand, and I'll just fix that through the magic of time lapse or stop start. Okay, so I've done the bottom side, which you're looking at now, and it's just a sort of mirror of the top side. Now for the thumb parts join kind of on the side and bottom of the hand simultaneously. So you need to do a little bit of preparation for where the thumb's going to land. Now the thumb is kind of quite an organised, elaborate bit of adjustment. So I'm just going to grab hold of some edges and start shifting those around a bit. So that one wants to move a little bit closer. That one needs to move a bit that way, as does that one. And then probably should have done these at a matching pair. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of build in the potential structure for the root of the thumb. We could end up doing some requadrification somewhere around here, adding in an extrude and just making some base topology just there. However, it's not, I don't know, I suppose not critical at this point. So that edge is a decent sort of profile, and that one can move a bit that way. Okay, so we've nearly triangulated that. A bit more paint deform, a bit more relax soften around here. We'll just even that out nicely. Bit pointy there, but still quads, or a bit of a winner. Okay, so now I did say before that I've kind of over-egged the wrist area just to make it easy to work on, but I can poke that down a bit and make a more reasonable palm shape. Okay, so essentially we want these polys here and capture them going nice and close. Okay, so we're going to have this sort of awkward-ish corner here, but ultimately it won't be anything more than a bit of a distraction. Okay, so we're going to go bevel. Now this is going to be a bevel that's almost flat because as you can see, you don't want too much instant sort of projection from the hand at this point. In fact, like I say, almost flat. Okay, now because this is such a wacky shape, I want to do a bit of probably a bit of paint deform actually. So we go freeform, paint deform, relax, soften, and do a bit of brushing. So I want to work on this corner here, just make it all here, just sort of relax in a bit, and just, there we go. So it's starting to go the way the mesh wants to go rather than being kind of pinned into a corner so much. That's more like it. Okay, so with a bit of work like that, you can see how it can easily, or more easily, become a thumb. Okay, so we've got some structure there that can be the webbing, but these two polys are not really needed for the next bit. So I'm going to deselect those by Alt keying and back to bevel. Oops, let's do a right click bevel, but get the caddy, don't just go with whatever it gives you. Okay, so this can be a little bit more extreme and probably should have a little bit more bit of mouse slippage there. Now, all well and good, and you can maybe start to see that it's getting a bit more thumb-like, but I've got an issue, that is that it's more like a kind of stump. So what we want to do is we want to align these. So if we go to modeling, align, oops, and we'll do make planar, so it'll find its own average angle of poly. And then we want to try and move it so it's more of a circular profile. And actually familiar with the tool for that, so I'm going to use I've gone in the side to get 2 axes so I can roughly follow the apparent angle of the planarity. It doesn't have to be dead flat, but it should be flatter than that, as they say. And again, I'm trying to move this to make it more or less circular. So a bit of fiddling, and that vert there can shift up. You can modify the transform angles so that the axes are pointing to represent, you know, the planarity of the object that you are, or sub-object that you're working with. But just using 2 axes, it's not that I want to maintain everything and square on for any particular purpose. Oops. Job of just looking for the right shape cursor. Okay, so back to polygon mode, and yeah, you can still do with a little bit of crunching down. So we need these 2 axes, the vertical, just to, that's better, that'll do for now. Okay, so now if I look at it square on and then go to rotate, you can see we can spin it around a bit, which is good, and then spin it around a bit in that axis, getting better, and then just move it over here, and then as you move it over you think, oh, I can probably rotate it a bit more, which is quite sort of reasonable. So if I get to the angle there, then I can use this outer one to rotate it around its, what looks like its own axis, and then we can do a bevel, which is, I'm just going to 0 that taper, and add a bit. And if you say, well, it's a bit fat looking, yeah, but it's about seeing the structure and creating the object, not having edge loops start to intersect when you overdo tapers, and then, you know, you can fix up the things like the proportions of this and that, and the placement kind of at an intermediate point. So if I grab that there, that's moving it in this axis still, isn't it? And then one more bev, and you can sort of see how and where it's going at this point. So I'm just checking my joints. Yep, that's about right. And then there's the nail side, so we kind of want to squidge up the end of the thumb a bit. It might be worth another, bevel operation, but you don't really have to go that far for this particular piece. Okay, so push that edge back, and if I can spin this round, I should be able to push it on a kind of, yep, on an axis that relates to its own self, as it were. And then you get these polygons, and I'm just trying to rotate to get to a decent axis, but it kind of not doesn't want to follow exactly where I'm going to go. That's okay. So I get roughly looking down it, and scale, and we'll just scale it in all. And widen it a bit. And there you go, it's kind of going to a thumb anyway. Okay, you can see the, if I was going to do another bevel, then obviously I wouldn't spend any time shaping this end area. Okay, so where's that view we had? Anyway, base joints for base profiles for fingers to grow from, and a thumb grown. Oh, look, there's a bit of a thing going on there. Okay, so that's a job for Paint Deform, get that to relax a bit. But yeah, base structure there. Oh, now there's the acid test. Is it all quads? Let's do view, restore active orthographic view. Oh, just zoom out a little bit. Polygon mode, selection, select, non-quads. Fantastic. And let's just look. Oops. Keep forgetting this. You need a selected poly for it to orbit round. Yep. No. No quads either side. Okay, so good structure there. And obviously, as you extrude the fingers out from quads, they will be created as quads. Okay, so that's the hand done. Let's now move on to the head. Now the head's a bit of a special case because it's on the centre line, although I suppose the hand's a bit of a special case too because it's a hand. Okay, so we will extrude up and create a block to be the head. Now again, this is going to look disappointing for quite a while until you understand that that again, simple base topology, progressive changes that build the structure right is what's required here. So just a bit of neck, probably overcooked it, but can fix that up in the edit, as they say. Although yeah, maybe it's a good idea. Let's do this facing the drawing just to make sure. So yeah, a little bit big for the neck mebs, but some pretty broad strokes here. That's more betterer. Okay, and then +1, but size this up, and this is going to go up to about eyes, eyebrows, and then plus again, which is going to go too far, but just bring that down, and we're good. Okay, now, obviously a bit ropey for a head, so there's a bit of reshaping or redesign that we can do for this. I'm just going to double click this edge loop here and drag it down a bit. What I'm going to do is build in a sort of safety zone for face head topology. So if I move that down there, so we've got a kind of collar-ish looking set of polys for the head, but while I'm thinking about it, actually I'll just see. So what happens when you do the extrude, obviously it fills in these center point, center line ones, which we don't need. So I'm just going to multi-select these 4, hit the delete key, and that should remove the middle ones. I've got something going on here on this corner which is slightly concerning me. I think it's just that it's created these as hard edge faces, and these because these were smoothed. And if I go edge poly, modeling, properties, smooth, there we go, job's a good one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is do some hand cuts to dequadrify. So if we dequadrify, which is to stop things from being four-sided, like that, then any swift loops or any swift loops we do, the automated process will stop at the point where it hits the last quad. Okay, so it'll go to the far side of the last quad and then stop. So all this topology that we're building in will be kind of usefully placed and not flow down the body. So like we did with the, instead of turning everything towards the side of the hand, slightly different for the head, because you want to make sure that that set of processes is kind of limited just to in the head, and you kind of use the turns a little bit more cleverly, I guess is the identifiable phrase. So I was just going to grab some polys and push them back for a chin and neck. No, for a under chin and neck, and I guess collar. So these here, it's going to make the shoulder look a bit weird, but this is for the purposes of use of the view cube. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Alt X, see through, left Alt and X, and just push these back to where I see them in the drawing. And while you're doing this, it's a good idea to get some of the other profile bits sorted out too. And then and a little bit down. Excuse me. Okay, so these bits are just the front of the arm, and once we've got this chest bit sorted out, it's easier then to see where other stuff should go. Okay, so if we go back to polygon mode, I can push these back first of all together, and then start thinking of those as more sort of individual planes. That kind of axis snap thing can get quite annoying. Okay, so I'm looking at where the eyebrow line is, and that's where I want that to be. And then just have a spin round and select this and that edge, control down to join them up. push that in a bit. Now you notice they're both a bit high from where they need to be, so that's an opportunity to poke them down somewhat. Although this profile is not quite the same, I can't get it the same because I haven't got enough edges, so no need to stress over that one. Okay, so around the back of the head, poke that one in. I'm just going to go slightly freehand from this without stressing overly where the drawing is suggesting I place things. Okay, let me just so we can see around the back there's a I could do with moving these up. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so at the moment we've got quite a pointy shoulder scenario, but it's not the time to be worrying about that yet. The time will come. Okay, so now let's add some more shaping in the other axes. Just poke that back a bit, and similar that end, and you can see it's starting to look more like a close-fitting box for a head rather than a box. And these up here. And again, you're kind of navigating either side of the line because that's just the way the model is configured at the moment. And you can start to think more in terms of things being rounded than boxy, and move things to suit. So the back of the neck obviously not as thick as that, so again, imagine in the circle, this corner would still be sticking out from where that circle you're thinking of is. And I'm just going to move that. No, I'm not going to leave it there. So if I select all these neck-based polys here, I'm going to leave that one in the corner, so when I move them in, it should sort of resolve quite nicely in the shape of the mesh. Something not too far. You can see there's something I've missed out. Yeah, the front jaw corner. This is a sort of area of the mesh where it's going to get refined and defined. I suppose I need to kind of take a view on it. I'm going to have a view on it that it is sort of round the side and not quite, but kind of close to the corner of the jaw. But so what happens is it gets pushed back a bit there, and then this bit wants to actually pop out a bit, and so we've got a bit of an exaggerated jawline there. But again, we are over going on the midway through a curve. We're going over the apparently obvious sort of shaping. So I'm just straightening this up. Now by eye you can sort of check and say, okay, it's centrally placed, but your by eye is kind of not good enough. So if we go to border mode, now border mode is any edges that only have polys on one side is border. I've got 28 edges there, which is a reasonable amount, and then it's worth just checking, see what you've got selected, and it all looks correct, present and correct. Yep, okay. Now in move, when you're in the move tool, you want to see that it says 0 there, but that's kind of masking something. So if we go to edge mode, every edge is probably on the 0 point, and if every edge is on the 0 point, then all the verts of course are attached to those. They will also be 0 points. Now what I want to make sure is that none of these edges are kind of off angle, because they might be placed centrally on the 0 point, but they might be off angle because a vert at either end got moved somehow. So from experience, this is a quick way to get all these edges to go to exactly kind of flat on the x-axis. So imagine the plane that's on the x-axis, the board that's kind of stuck on the end of the arrow, from which the arrow projects. We want all of the edges to be kind of flat to that axis. So if I just went align X, I got away with it that time. Okay, so I think I can presume now that all my verts are on the center line. So if we see end result, you will see through a kind of overlap, a bit of orange mesh on the right hand side, or you'll see if there's a gap. It's really easy to spot if there's a gap. So if I grab one of these and just poke it that way a bit, you can see that's what a gap looks like. If you see a sort of shimmering where it kind of doesn't really know whether to do a white line or an orange line, again, that's a bit of a gap. If it's just the odd one, always do it on the verts. Don't try and do it on the edge by moving, because the edge could easily be off whack. So at the bottom here it says point, whatever it is. It's not 0 anyway, that's what we want. So you move your cursor to these arrows here, right click, and it zeroes it, and your problem goes away. So align edges, so do a border selection, go then change that to edge, it'll be the same edges selected, and then align to X, okay, or whatever axis your symmetry is lined around. Okay, so that all looks good. Let's get rid of see-through. So now we can see we've got you know, it's a head-ish shaped mesh. Well, there's a weird thing going on with that triangle there, but that triangulation of that quad. Oh yeah, we're still worried about whether it is actually quads or not. So polygon, selection, select non-quads, and yeah, we've got some around the neck. Got 9 polygons selected. Oh, that's interesting. So what it's done, I think, is maybe those two triangles are actually joined into one, but again that would be the same on the other side. Well, I don't know. Should have more than 9, but anyway. No complaints here. No non-quads anywhere but on the neck where we made them specifically. Okay, let's start cutting the head. So the idea with the head is to make all of the these front 4 faces of the head, these front 4 polys, all of the edge loops really are contained within that. And the base structure means that you only ever do extrude or swift loop, and that's it. And you can go from that to a much higher poly model without doing any more kind of individualized cuts. So it's all swift loops or extrudes, and that's all you'll need. Okay, so I'm not going to make a whole ear, but you can see that the ear can be constructed out of an inset kind of pattern, a rectangle of quads which you can then make ear shaped. Okay, so for the face of the face, let's start adding some stuff in. So we will need a cut that goes from the middle to the edge, or is it from the edge to the middle? Who knows? So vertex mode, so I can see where I'm putting verts down. Okay, so we've got the eyebrow section sorted out, so we go right click, cut, and this will be the eye orbit. Now I'm going to make it fairly regular as a rectangle, although in practice this vert will end up somewhere around here. Okay, then I'm going to put a cut in that's going to be for the bottom of the nose. And then I'm going to kind of cut half of an inset, sorry. So the half of an inset goes something like this, because we can't do an extrude on the center line. We don't want that pattern of edge loops. Effectively, we're cutting the lip line in as a kind of letterbox. And oops, just nearly forgot this corner here. Okay, so one more thing to do, which is a swift loop. Almost forgot this, that would have been very embarrassing. So we need a swift loop to stop the eyes from kind of overflowing into the nose area. So you'll see the swift loop, you can see how far it's going, and it's stopping at the kind of base of the head, or stopping at the throat. So instead of flowing all the way down the model and going down the body, it's kind of staying put nicely. Okay, so go polygon mode, and we are going to bevel in slightly the eyes. Ooh, I like the angry robot look there. So they want to be a bit out of, they don't want to be the wrong shape, of course, but they do want to be a little bit more up, like that, kind of eye height, and then narrower kind of eye width. Okay, so if you're in your mind's eye, if you think about the eyeball, the eyelids being within this selected poly, then that's about right. Okay, so if I deselect now, you can see more clearly the way things are going to work. Oh, one more thing, which is polygon. Now, I get into all sorts of trouble by doing an extrude, so it's cut again. Don't know why I thought anything different. Okay, so we'll go into here and cut half an extrude or half an inset for the nose. Half a bevel it is. Okay, because the mirror is going to do the other half. So right click, cut, and it doesn't really matter how close you get to the area that's going to be the nose, and then to the middle, and then finally join these two verts up here. Okay, so now we've got some bits that can become, oops, still in cut mode. So pull that one out and down a bit. Then this one out, and then this one goes in because it's sort of just that little bit of dint. Now you can see here we could do with something else to follow that curve around there, but we're not going to join up there, otherwise we'll end up chasing this triangle away. So that'll be a different edge loop which will kind of link up and go over there and allow us to make more of the curve for the bridge of the nose instead of the dint that it is now, and allow this complicated curve here. Okay, so with this structure, what else would you need to add? Well, holes for the nostrils. You might want a bump on the side of the nose here, so that would be some cutting, and a cut to go over the nose probably, so we've got a kind of decent nostril bump area. That said, even with what we've got, we could just extrude it in that poly there, and then kind of fix it up after the fact. So this poly, maybe scale it down a bit there, and Q, right click, bevel. Move that out of the way. Let's zero a few things first. Okay, so do the inset and then lift it out a bit. You could even just do it as an inset and then use the move to get the projection you need, and then you probably want to do a bit of paint deform work. Okay, so freeform, paint deform, relax, soften. You can see now the brush is starting to look very big, even at 3. So it's probably a radius, I'm guessing. So let's do 1.5. That's better. Okay, still now starting to look a little bit faceted, like a cut diamond. And oh yeah, that mouth corner's wrong. So move that in. That's a bit more reasonable. So what you will need to try and do is resist the temptation to put a center loop going sort of across the mouth, so to make the corner of the lip a kind of sharp thing, you know, a real reflex angle. So you don't want a kind of pointy corner of the lip. You want to maintain an edge that's sort of pretty vertical. It can be quite small, but you want to really keep it. So the mouth you make by bagging. Now, if I go for the Swift Loop tool, now anywhere I want to add some more detail, and I'll need plenty, by the way, I merely need to work out where it needs to be and click it, like going around the eyes as well. So anytime I need a loop, it stays in this little trapped area here. Okay. If I need some edges to go across the eye, there we go. And you notice how it doesn't flow outside of this little area, because that big poly on the side of the head is not a quad. So we're adding detail in, it joins in on one side, and it might give us a bit of trouble over this side later on. Plenty more hand cuts, but I'll need something to build out a structure for the ear as well. So if you think about the ear as being, obviously it doesn't look anything like an eye, but the structure where it's going to fit in is like an eye socket almost on the side of the head. If you think about it in those terms, then you're thinking about, well, I can join some of this bits around the side of the head. I can end up, helping to support the structure of the structure for the base of the ear there. Okay, so this structure is now good to go for developing into a face, and it really doesn't need any more cuts adding. It's swift loops and the odd extrude. So for instance, around here by the chin, you might think, well, I need a bit of a chin knobble. Okay, so we'll actually not an extrude, it's cutting again. So like we did for the nose area, that was cut by hand, and like we did for the mouth as well, you have to cut that by hand. You can't do that by bevels or inset, because it goes over the center line. But yeah, so add those things in by hand. But yeah, that's kind of where it needs to be. So I can show you on another model actually. So something that was developed using this base structure here, with these orbits as defined by this structure here, is what I've got an example of. So if I right click this, okay, and I want to show you now another thing I've got on the go, which is this one. So this figure was derived from that same topology. So the hair is something else, by the way, so don't look at the hair, but look at the face itself. It's developed from just that topology I've just shown you. The only other things were swift loops and cuts to make kind of half bevels on the center line. So let's have a look at the wireframe on this. So F4. Ooh. There we are, edge faces. So we can see that corner point that was kind of going down the block there, and then there's another. You'll find these called poles, and if you look at them, they're kind of right here. They are slightly different. So there are 5 edges going into this pole, and that's a result of kind of meeting the edge of a bit of structure that was already there. Okay, so with 1, 2, 3, I've added 3 swift loops into this eye socket to be able to make the eye as it is. Now it's not kind of perfect, and you'll see I've got more swift loops going over the top. So unlike with the mouth, it's a good idea probably to have corners for the kind of corner ones, edges for the corner of the eye. So don't struggle to leave that as a little edge that helps it look more kind of circular, rounded, not necessary. I've used spheres for eyes in this case, and they have a use. Even if your model doesn't need a sphere for an eye and you're not animating the eye, it can still, it's a good thing to have to model your mesh around as well, so that if the, if the sphere shows up through little bits of it, then you're onto a reasonable eye shape, and it's good for keeping the eyelid shape convincing. Okay, so extrude's added in here for the eyebrow. So I keep saying extrude, I mean bevel, just to build out a bit of a eyebrow space if necessary. Although, as you can see from this angle here, I didn't do that much building it out, but still a little bit more circulatory detail. And then there's, if I Control D, yeah, deselect all. There's another join, so where the pole point for the eye socket and the nose area is. Here, where it was cut in to extrude the nose out to make the bridge of the nose. But as I say, that's it. You don't need to have loads and loads of detail, just enough to get the profile right. And we get to this stage by progressively adding a couple of loops, reshaping the eye, then a bit of brush over with the relax soften brush just to even out the mesh, and that shows you where you might need some more loops. The mouth situation, model the mouth slightly open, push some extruded, or maybe, yeah, extruded polys in, build the lips out with a few loops. Now, if we look from the side, you can see it's pretty angular, so another loop in there. You can also see clearly that the lip line has been kind of double lined with edges, and that means when you do subdivision smoothing, to add subdivisions to make it less hard edged, to make more curves and roundedness, that means you've got these areas retained with pretty much the same sharpness. Okay, so that base topology from the other one, this one can become that with progressive adding. So you add a loop, move it to the position, different software, relax soften using Paint Deform to even out the display, and then you can see where you've got some things that need spacing out, or need extra edge loops in to make the shape that you need to represent. Okay, so if I click in space and remove edge faces, you can see a lot of shapes, a few little kind of dimply bits, but again a bit more subdividing. Maybe an automatic subdivision at this point would do it. So it's not hand picking, it's just subdivide everywhere all over the mesh. And again, another double line of the lid around the eyelids, and that would have it. Okay, so that's part 2 done with. Thank you for watching, and part 3 will be kind of, what's the word, a stop-start progress towards this sort of level, and some advice on building out areas for clothing. Okay, thank you.